Call this meeting to order. Today is August the 1st. The time is 5:01 p.m. This is a special meeting for public hearing on the tentative 17-18 budget and millage rates and other business matters. If you would, please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag led by Ms. Simchak.
Thank you. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now I would entertain a motion for the adoption of the orders of the day.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. All
Aye.
opposed, same sign. Okay, the next item is citizen input, and I have two requests. Both of them want to speak on the action item, but which action? There's only one action item. Okay, we'll be with you directly then. Okay. The consent agenda.
Move approval as published.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. All opposed,
Aye.
same sign. Motion carries. Next item is the action item would be approval of the administrative services agreement between Blue Cross Blue Shield of Florida, doing business as Florida Blue and the School Board of Indian River County. Before we move on, is that the action item you folks want to speak on, or do you want to speak on the budget? The budget? Okay. That's what I thought. Okay. Okay. Dr. Rendell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In action item A, we're seeking approval for the new administrative services agreement between Blue Cross Blue Shield of Florida to serve as our health care service administrator. The term of the contract is for 5 years from October 1st, 2017 through September 30th, 2022, unless the agreement is terminated earlier in accordance with the provisions of the agreement. We've been in a lengthy negotiation process with Blue Cross, and that has come to fruition, and we're seeking your approval on this contract, this agreement tonight.
Okay. Something doesn't add up right there.
Yeah, I already just entertain a motion. Just call for a motion.
But we had the motion on the orders of the day, didn't we?
Yes, sir. Just call for a motion.
Okay, I'll call for motion. Go, Sean.
Ms. Justice,
Second.
Mrs. Zork.
All in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign.
Discussion?
Discussion.
Discussion? All right, let's hear it.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want, because for the public maybe, I understand these are long and lengthy processes, but it is a very long 5-year contract, so I think it would be important to explain the pros and cons of retaining for 5 years and why we did so, and I think it's just, especially with the employees, it would be important to let us know the benefits of retaining for 5 years.
Absolutely, and even though it's a 5-year contract, there are opportunities for us to leave the contract earlier than the 5 years. So I don't know if Mr. Morrison wants to take a stab at it, or if you'd like to have Richard come up.
I probably would divert to Mr. Kaufman from Aon to approach the podium. I do know some of the negotiated items and some of the benefits, but they were intricately involved with Dr. Fritz prior to my taking over that responsibility.
Good afternoon. It is standard in the insurance industry for public agencies to have multi-year contracts. Carriers that enter into business with public agencies know that there's going to be the potential of always going out to market every 3 years, every 5 years. So when the carriers give their quotes, they take into consideration the stability of the account. So knowing that there is a 5-year contract gave them a sense that they have any investments they were going to make, they're willing to do so because they'll be able to have a stable account for 5 more years. There were provisions built into the contract allowing the district with cause to be able to, or without cause, to be able to terminate the contract with 150 days notice. Previously, that was not in the contract, and it was an uncomfortable bargaining situation. So the length of the contract is not unusual. They've agreed to hold their administrative fees flat for 3 years and a slight increase in years 4 and 5. But this is standard in the public sector as far as health insurance contracts.
That's great, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, can you, and I have sat through some of your meetings, but can you refresh us on the provision of a full-time on-site Florida Blue representative? What will they be doing, and how will we be utilizing this person?
Yep. This person will be a Florida Blue employee, but they will be deployed on-site here at the district. And so it'll be up to Mr. Morrison and his team to determine how best to use the person. Do we have the person spend 1 day at transportation, another day here? The idea is for them to be able to be in person to address questions that employees and members have on their claims, about providers, things of that sort. Rather than, because one of the issues that came up was the concern that employees would call into Florida Blue, be put on hold for quite a while. So if there was a real person that had access to their systems, they would be able to better serve your members.
Okay, Mr. Chair. I believe I already know the answer to this, but the Florida Blue representative will be interviewed by our staff before we approve them to come in-house. Is that
That's correct.
Okay.
We were waiting until the contract was formally approved before we started to bring in candidates.
Okay. I think this is a very good added feature, a bonus to our employees, because I do know it was a problem of employees calling and not getting an answer right away when they're at the doctor's office. So I do hope that that helps,
So do we.
helps this issue.
Yes, we expect it to.
Mr. Cersey?
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say thank you to Mrs. Zork for bringing this up and pointing that out, because in an effort, I think, for the school district with everything that's gone on with insurance, to be a great employer, a better employer that listens to our employees, that this is such a wonderful feature. So thank you for highlighting that, and I'm very happy about it.
Any other discussion? Yes, sir, Sean.
Thank you. I notice in the highlights here, the elimination of all pharmacy rebate withholdings. We were able to make that happen. That's exciting. Can you tell me a little bit more about that, and what that means potentially in fiscal impact to the district?
Well, we know that with the pharmacy being carved out to the pharmacy coalition, the net savings to the district through that move is about $500,000 per year. How much of that was isolated to rebate, better rebate contracts, discounts, I don't have that information right now, but one of the things that we did find was that Florida Blue was not only retaining rebates on retail drugs and mail order, but also on inpatient drugs. And so one of the things we had to negotiate specifically was that there would be absolutely no rebate withhold under any situations.
Excellent. Thank you.
I have one
Yes, sir.
question. I noticed in here that Florida Blue is basically, they just manage the claims for us. Is that correct? Because I noticed there's one statement here that sort of bothers me. They don't assume any financial risk or obligation with respect to claims. None.
So you're self-funded, so it's
We
your
have it all.
plan. You do have a stop-loss vendor in QBE. It was Symetra, but it is your plan. You're not fully insured, so they must perform in terms of being able to provide discounts through their network, through their care management programs. But as far as the responsibility for the claims, the dollars themselves, that is the school board's responsibility.
Okay. I just want to make sure that was aired out. Okay.
Can I say one more thing? I do want to thank Dr. Rendell and his staff for, we as a board had asked them to look into this, and they came back and they delivered, and I appreciate bringing this back to us in a timely manner. And on top of it, we were able to negotiate and get better service and save money
Yes.
through the long term. So I appreciate staff and Aon for bringing this back to us tonight.
I do want to make sure that we don't forget the work of the High-Tef Committee. These are people that volunteer their time, some retired, other members of our different employee groups that serve on that committee. And their recommendations really help shape, the negotiations, and they play a big part in getting to where we're at today. So I want to thank them.
Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, the next item will be the, we want to reconvene the public hearing now. I believe that is correct. Or actually, we want to recess the business meeting and reconvene the public hearing at this time. Is that correct? Keep talking to me.
I believe Mr. Morrison gave you the wording. You're not recessing the meeting just yet. You're
Wait.
doing some introductory statements first.
Okay,
Right
on
at
the,
top of the
on the
paperclip
public hearing?
page, right at the top
Yeah,
of the
this one,
paperclip, right
okay.
there.
Yes,
All
sir.
right, we will introduce this. We'll now move into the public hearing of the 2017-18 proposed millage rates and budget that was recessed on July 25th, 2017. Dr. Rendell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We will adopt tentative millage rates and then adopt a tentative budget for the 17-18 school year after receiving public input. Truth in millage or trim advertisements have been placed according to the specifications of law. Trim requires that proposed taxes, also referred to as millage rates, be the first issue we discussed and adopt at this public hearing. The board will make two separate motions before completing their task. The first one will be to set all tentative millage rates. The second motion will be to adopt the tentative budget. Major issues on taxes will be reviewed, followed by the input from the public prior to board motions. Mr. Morrison, if you could take us through the discussion of the millage rates.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rendell. If I could have the technician in the back put the PowerPoint presentation. Thank you very much. So board members, you should have a copy of this evening's presentation in front of you, and members of the public, we did provide extra copies as well. So on September the 8th, 2016, the school board adopted a millage rate of 7.41 mils, comprised of required local effort of 4.562 mils, local discretionary of 0.748 mils, a special voted millage referendum of 0.6 mils, and capital outlay millage of 1.5. The proposed 2017-18 tentative millage rates are 4.305 mils for required local effort, which is 0.257 lower than the prior year's adopted rate. The local discretionary rate is 0.748, which remains unchanged. Special millage referendum, as we are aware that the 0.6 millage referendum has expired and was replaced with a voter-approved 0.5 mils. So it's a decrease of 0.1 mil. And capital outlay millage is proposed at 1.5, which remains the same, for a total of 7.053 mils, 0.357 less, or 4.81% lower than the prior year's adopted millage rate. In comparison to the rollback rate, which is prescribed by the Florida Department of Revenue's calculations, the rollback rate is 6.975 as compared to the proposed rate of 7.053, 0.078 mils higher, or 1.12% higher than the rollback rate. Hence, the advertisement that went out in the newspaper for a proposed notice of proposed tax increase. So what effect does this have on the homeowner? This scenario assumes no increase of a assessed valuation on a home valued at $200,000. This homeowner would have paid in 2016-17 $1,296.75. With a proposed millage rate in 17-18 would pay taxes of $1,234.28, or a decrease of $62.47, or 4.81% less. However, the property appraiser is reporting that property values in Indian River County have risen by an average of 7.66%. Increase in the assessed valuation. However, with the Savior Homes cap, only 3% of that value is taxed. So on that $200,000 home, for example, the increase in value would be $15,320. However, with the Savior Homes cap at 3%, the tax is only applied to that base. So in 16-17, this taxpayer would have paid $1,296.75 and paid $1,276.59 with the proposed rate, or a tax decrease of $20.16, or 1.5%. less. Mr. Chairman, with that, we conclude the presentation of the tentative millage rates, and it is time to sound the halls for any public input on the millage rates.
Okay. So we want to close the
So
meeting?
you just go to number 4.
I'm sorry, four? Yeah, okay. We want to close the board meeting and open the public hearing at this time. I believe that's correct. Okay. Okay. But do you folks want to speak on the millage, or do you want to speak on the budget? Okay. Would that be correct, then, Sean? Okay. Just want to make sure you get your 2 cents worth in, by the way. Okay. Okay, let's see, Dr. Rendell, do we read this thing for you now?
Yeah, it's there and there, either place.
Okay. This item's deals with the 2017-18 proposed millage rates. Dr. Rendell, have you documented that this public hearing was properly advertised in accordance with state statute?
Yes, sir, I actually have copies of the advertisements that were published in the local newspaper, this time correctly, last week. Thank you, sir.
Okay, now we gavel up here. We now recess the meeting to conduct the public hearing as advertised. The public hearing is now reconvened from July 25th, 2017, and is in session. Dr. Rendell, are there any written responses to the advertised public hearing to be read at this time?
No, sir, we did not receive any written responses.
The public is invited to address this issue at this time. Okay. Is there any individual representing an organization or his own personal or public interest who wishes to speak? Obviously none. Okay. The chair concludes that the announced public hearing on August 1st, 2017 has been conducted pursuant to notice, and that ample opportunity to address this issue has been provided to all. Reconvene. The board is meeting and is reconvened at this time. So at this point, we need a motion to approve the setting of the millage rates.
Move to approve the millage rates as published and advertised.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just one thing.
Sir.
I have never voted for the millage before, but this year I have the opportunity to throw my support behind it because it is being shared equitably with all public school students in the district. And I hope that no matter what happens in Broward, that this board will continue doing so. But at this time, I just wanted to thank the legislature, and I'm excited to support this.
Anybody else? Okay. No other discussion. I guess it's time for a vote. Ms. Epplin, would you call for a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Justice?
Yes.
Ms. Simchek?
Yes.
Mr. Frost?
Yes.
Ms. Zork?
Yes.
Chairman Searcy?
Yes.
The motion carried unanimously in favor.
Okay, now I guess we want to have the next public hearing for discussion of the budget first.
First, right, yes, sir.
Okay. This time, we'll have the discussion of the budget. Dr. Rendell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will turn this over to Mr. Morrison. I believe we'll continue on through the PowerPoint.
Yes. Thank you. Again, thank you. This year's proposed tentative budget is approximately $278,514,116, which is approximately $8,228,535 less than the prior year's adopted budget of $286,742,651. It is comprised of general operating fund of $173,960,541, and that can be found on page 19 of the district's budget book, which we distributed. It represents an increase of $2,362,858. Primarily, the lion's share of that is the infusion of the FEFB funding that we receive from the state. In debt service, on page 103, we have a tentative debt service budget of $22,960,000, $576. Once again, on page 103. The fund balance is, the increase is due to the fund balance increase in the sinking fund. You may recall that we have a forward delivery agreement with Deutsche Bank, which requires us to deposit funds into the sinking fund. The capital projects fund can be found on page 107 of the district's budget book in the amount of $33,352,632, which is $18,632,389 less, which represents the spend down of the COP proceeds in the prior year budget for Beachland Elementary and the Citrus Bowl primarily. On the special revenue for food service can be found on page 117 of the district's budget book, which represents an increase of $289,336. Again, the budget primarily is due to a correction of the revenues that we're accounting for the USDA donated commodities this year. Special revenue and federal funds can be found on page 113 of the district's budget book in the amount of $11,671,199, which, as you can see in the line item, represents an increase in the Title I and the IDEA budget, which are the larger budgets in the federal funds. On the group insurance can be found on page 122 of the district's budget book in the amount of $23,366,918, which is an increase of $5,799,050, which represents primarily the turnaround of that deficit in the insurance fund and the subsequent increase in the fund balance. And the enterprise fund can be found on page 124 of the district's budget book in the amount of $1,196,675, or $14,508 less than the prior year, which is immaterial. The difference between the two budgets in 2016-17 of $286,742,651 and the proposed tentative budget for 2017-18 of $278,514,116 is $8,228,535, or 2.86% less. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the presentation of the 2017-18 proposed tentative budget. It is now appropriate to sound the halls for any public input on the proposed tentative budget.
Okay. I guess, Dr. Rendell, you've documented this public hearing was properly advertised in accordance with state statutes. You may have already told me that.
Yes, sir, it has been.
Now, got her now, okay. We now recess this meeting to conduct the public hearing as advertised. The public hearing is now reconvened from July 25th, 2017 as in session. Dr. Rendell, are there any written responses to the advertised public hearing to be read at this time?
We did not receive any written responses to be read at this time, but I do believe you have two members of the audience who have signed up to speak.
Okay. At this time, we would invite the public to speak, and the first speaker is Lourdes Penagos.
Good afternoon. My name is Lourdes Penagos. I am an ESOL support staff employee and also a CWA 3180 officer and part of the CWA bargaining team representing all of our Indian River County School District support staff. An old African proverb states, it takes a village to raise a child. The support staff of Indian River County School District is part of this village. We work together to support our education system, and we go above and beyond to assure that our children's needs are met. All support staff are valued and essential members of this village, as we have an important role to the students' experience. Dr. Rendell, school board members, administrators, and Indian River County residents. The salaries of the support staff of Indian River County are low and microscopic. that 40 hours work week still will not be enough to keep their families out of poverty. Imagine supporting your family on a $15,000 to $23,000 yearly salary. According to the United States Census Bureau, in 2016, the property threshold for a family of 4 was an annual salary of $24,424. Many support staff wages come to less than $250 a week, and that is before payroll taxes and benefit costs. Indian River County School District support staff are the face of poverty in this county. These are the mothers and fathers struggling to keep the lights on, feed, house, clothe, and educate their children. Dr. Rendell, school board members, many of your own employees are forced to depend on federal nutritional assistance programs to put food on their tables. Many of your valuable yet low-wage support staff have starving salaries that is not enough to cover their basic necessities. For a long time, our school district has neglected and not invested in those employees that are an essential part of this team. Support staff plays a giant role in our students' academic, emotional, and social growth and success. This is the main reason why I am concerned about the proposed budget of $344,000 as a one-time payment for the combined 2016, 2017, and 2017-2018 school years. This one-time payment does not increase the annual salary of your support staff, nor will it make a difference in their future retirement pensions. As a consequence, there will be absolutely no improvement in the lives and financial needs of your well-deserving support staff. It is time that the Indian River County School District stop this revolving door of microscopic salaries and begins showing value and investment in the future of those that day by day hold the hands and guide our students toward a promising future. And it is long overdue that support staff has a promising future by increasing their wages and curbing the cost of benefits that are essential in contributing to the quality of life that your employees deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nagus. Got that right. Becky Cook.
Good evening. My name is Becky Cook. I'm a support staff employee of the Indian River County School District. I am also a CWA Local 3180 union officer representing nearly 700 school district employees during negotiations. Support staff is the second largest group employed by the school district next to teachers. The board members sitting before me have each served the school district for less than 4 years. So you may or may not fully understand the dire situation concerning many support staff employees. About 9 years ago, employees were under a STEPS annual wage increase salary schedule. Those steps were frozen and upward wage movement was discontinued soon after that. We know that the steps are not likely to come back. When the step freeze happened, employees were no longer given wage increases for their years of service and for additional experience, including professional development and training. To make matters worse, any increases in the wages after they were eaten up by constant benefit cost increases over the years. Even more alarming, employees' net pay decreased. We have gone backwards in pay, not forward. The situation is contributing to the increasing poverty in Indian River County. Over the past 5 years, the school district has adjusted the salaries for all groups except support staff. Administration salaries have increased by as much as 17.47%. Teacher salaries have increased by as much as 18%. And recently, over the past year or so, an independent company was hired to study confidential managerial and professional technical salaries, which resulted in an increase of as much as 10.38%. I currently see no line item in the tentative budget to do a study on support staff wages. Support staff employees are your bus drivers, your teacher assistants, your school nurses, your cafeteria workers, your secretaries and clerical workers, your custodians, your maintenance employees, and more. All these employees are critical to the safety, health, and education of the more than 17,000 students in Indian River County. They are the lowest paid employees receiving hourly wages. An independent and comprehensive wage study is imperative, is long overdue, and needs to be added to the 2017-2018 proposed budget. Currently, during negotiations with the CWA union, the school board has proposed no wage increase for at least 2 years, along with removing our annual evaluation bonuses. The last wage increase support staff received was for 2015-2016, which was 39 cents. But unfortunately, to further erode the support staff wages, health insurance premiums rose 41 to 182% in 2016. The 39-cent raise was wiped out for most employees by the health care insurance premium increase. On page 101 of the proposed budget, line 581, there are 4 reserves for salary enhancements. Line items which include administration, professional technical, confidential managerial, and the last one is for CWA members of the bargaining unit, support staff. The amount proposed is for $344,198 to be divided up among approximately 700 employees. This is the current 2-year totaled offer to support staff employees instead of a wage increase for 2016-2017 and 2017-2018. The average amount for those employees would be approximately $490. That is the total amount that they would receive in a one-time payment for this 2-year period. The annual evaluation bonuses over the same 2-year period, which the school board has elected to discontinue for support staff, would have totaled for 2 years. For highly effective, employees would have received $747.60, and for an effective employee, they would have received $560.70. Both those amounts are more than the proposed $490. Salary enhancement for the same 2 years. Once again, support staff loses income. All of this is causing the downward spiral of the net pay for support staff employees. 700 employees and their families have seen their economic stability shaken and reduced. Their situation also affects the local economy in Indian River County because the school district is the largest employer. This is unacceptable consequences for hourly employees who are frustrated by an employer who should do for them what they did for their salaried employees. We encourage you to add to the tentative budget an independent and comprehensive wage study on all those jobs that fall within the support staff group, as well as show your support and appreciation for these hardworking, dedicated employees by giving them a much-needed wage increase, not a small one-time payment. And I want to add a note that I want to thank you because you decreased the tax millage rate was decreased through the school district, because I had read an article in the newspaper saying that the 2018 Indian River County tax millage rate would increase the taxes from 5.7% to 12.3%. and that depends on where you live in this county. Many support staff employees are homeowners. Some are trying desperately to keep from losing their home because of the reduction in their take-home pay. How could they possibly afford a tax increase on their property? Thank you for at least reducing that for us. Support staff employees, their families, and their friends are taxpayers and voters too. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. Okay, the chair concludes that the announced public hearing for August 1st, 2017 has been conducted pursuant to the notice and that ample opportunity to address the issue has been provided to all. We want to reconvene. I need a motion first, or we're going to reconvene?
Reconvene the business meeting and then look for a motion.
Okay, we're going to reconvene the meeting. And I need a motion for adoption of the budget and setting the date and time for the final public hearing. And the motion would be like, I move to approve resolution 18, there you go, Sean, if you would read that one for me.
I move to approve Resolution 2018-02, adopting the tentative budget as advertised and presented at this hearing, and that we establish the final public hearing for 5:01 p.m. on Thursday, September 7th, 2017.
Need a second?
A second.
Okay, any discussion?
Just one thing,
Yes,
very
sir.
quickly. And I do want to thank the board and Mr. Morrison and everyone for holding the school district's budget essentially flat. And in some ways, some taxpayers may see a decrease in their taxes because the required local effort is less. Unfortunately, I think that if you're like me, I received a notice of escrow shortage. So it's not this school board, it is the county. And not to throw anyone under the bus, they're good friends, but if you like what's happening with the taxes going up, then let your county commissioners know, and if you don't like, you can also let your county commissioners know. But this school board, I would love to see those tax increases going into education. That isn't the case. So I don't know that things are going to be better, but I do know that they will be different, so.
Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second.
I do
Oh,
have.
you have, okay, I'm
Yes.
sorry, Laura.
I just want to remind the board that I had brought forward some ideas to reduce the budget. I'm hoping that even though we're gonna pass this today, the tentative budget, that we still look at ways to be more efficient. I brought up the attorney, looking into the attorney comparison, bringing in-house. I had mentioned the transportation. I felt it's very inefficient the way it is currently. I'm open to hearing reorganization from the Director of Transportation. Unfortunately, I would have liked to seen that before we passed the budget, to see how she would have liked to reorganize the department versus passing a budget and then having her bring that to us. So in the future, that's something I would like to have. If a director or executive director is looking at reorganizing, is to have it before we approve the new budget. I do think we have some opportunities in the way that we're purchasing our school buses. I think there's room for improvement in that area. I think we still have opportunity in our health insurance. We still have to look at how to be more efficient. I know we have 3 plans. There's several of us that have one plan, and it is working well. So that would be a $300,000 savings per year if we could look at that through the year. And also looking at the travel for the district, for the employees and the staff, I still think there is a large gap in where we can save on that. I think, I would like to see a $50,000 decrease. I have a binder in my office where I keep track of that, and I know we can reduce that by at least $50,000. So even if if Dr. Rendell and staff disagrees, I'm open to hearing, any area of improvement in that line item. And also, I would encourage the board, I would love to hear any suggestions that you have in looking at the budget and where we could be more efficient, and maybe have us all talk about this, because I don't want to be the only one up here that's presenting these ideas, or if you're presenting them behind with Dr. Rendell, I would love to hear suggestions in how you would like to see areas of efficiency and cuts. I have asked to look at our non-labor discretionary, because I really feel that's an area that I don't know what's in those large amounts. So I think you've probably seen that come through the email. I'm hoping that we can get that over the next couple of weeks before we actually do approve the final budget. So, but I would like to ask a specific question, if I can, and I was hoping that Dr. Rendell or Mr. Morrison can explain, coming into this year, in our reserves, how much do we have coming into this year that is not restricted?
It's actually in the budget book. I don't know the page number. Mr.
Getting there.
Morrison can find it.
Yes, so on page 99, non-spendable as of July 1, and again, we are in the process of closing out the books, recording the accruals, we're still paying bills that have trickled in late, that kind of thing. Non-spendable, which is inventory on the shelf, gas in the fuel tanks, that sort of thing. Inventory on the shelf in the warehouse is $305,455. Restricted is $9,165,918, which I believe I've given the board a detail of that. That contains your advanced placement, your IB funds, your CAPE funds, which is career and professional funds, all your categoricals from the state that must be rolled forward because those have grant restrictions on those. So those are not unrestricted dollars. In the assigned is $15,432,428, and the assigned, according to the Governmental Accounting Standards Board statement number 54, that assigned should also reflect the next year's budget deficit. So, in other words, next year's deficit, you will not have those funds available. So if you look on the unassigned portion, you will see that there is essentially no free cash. So based on the projected revenues in 2017-18 of $149,056,740, and the projected appropriations from the schools and departments of $165,772,827, the projected ending fund balance is $8,187,714. However, please recall that about $8 million or so of that, actually about $8 million of the $9 million, is based on dollars that we have collected in the prior year for the millage that now have been rolled forward into the new budget year. Mr. Green, as I believe at the last board meeting, explained that essentially his budget cycle is from November to November when we have cash. So at the end of 2018, the non-spendable, if you spend every single dollar that you have appropriated in the budget, which we do not, it's a spending plan, we have estimated the non-spendable of $305,455, which is essentially when you do your inventory, you get that value. The restricted is reflected at $1,641,138 because we anticipate spending down those millage funds that are already reserved in the fund balance this year. Now, we have an agenda item that's coming up on August the 8th to transfer some of those restricted funds from the workforce funds for the construction of the technical center. So those restricted dollars will also be drawn down, which will be reflected on your final budget. And so the assigned would be reduced to $4,613,976, and your unassigned at $1,627,145. So those numbers, again, are just projected. They're subject to change. Once we go through the year, we always try to manage the budget in a manner that we try to keep our finances together. You've seen me come before you with categorical flex resolutions, closing purchase orders after 90 days. We try to do those types of things to try to keep us, our appropriations together. So that's a long way of answering your question,
Right.
but I just felt it was important to break down each sector for you.
Go ahead, Laura.
So I know there's two different numbers that we try to keep an eye on. Reserves, I believe the board has a policy to try to keep it 5% or above. And then there's a state policy that we have to keep our reserves at 3% or above. Is that is on the unassigned?
The standard is, and the board policy measures the assigned and the unassigned together. Your current board policy is at a floor or a minimum of 5%, and the state statute represents 3%. However, I think it would be important for the board to recall that we still have over $100 million in, or not, roughly 91 or 93 million in certificates of participation that are still outstanding. And Moody's and Fitch ratings do tie your credit rating to the amount of reserves that you have on hand. We could not have done some of the things that we were able to do at the Citrus Bowl and also Beachland in order to get those interest rates that we got on those funds. In addition, keeping a reserve on hand is very important. We could not have increased the board's contribution for health insurance, for example, if we did not have those reserves on hand in order to offset some of what we did last year in the budget. So those are the types of things that you want to make sure if a hurricane comes through, you have emergency mobilization money. That's why the board kept that policy at 5 as opposed to the state's 3.
Go ahead, Laura.
Okay. I would like to ask the attorney, what happens when a board goes below the 3% of the reserve? What happens at this point? Because I know that's a state statute. So can you walk us through that process?
Yes, ma'am. There's actually 2 steps to the process. Once a school board reaches 3%, goes below 3% in their general fund reserves, there's a process to report that to the state level and for essentially a watch to occur. And questions will be asked if there's a plan in place to be able to maintain at the 3% level. There have been examples in the past where school boards have reached the second tier of the process, if you will, where school boards' fund balances have reached the 2% and below level. At that point, again, there's reporting requirements, but the State Board of Education, the Department of Education, will actually begin to oversee your finances. It's possible for the State Board of Education to assign someone to come and actually operate your finance department for a period of time in an attempt to put your finances back in order. A plan is required. Monitoring goes on constantly. It's possible for you to lose the ability to spend your money the way the school board wishes to do it, and a committee or a person who is assigned to the district would be the individual who makes those decisions. So it's a tiered approach. Once you go below 3%, there's a certain level of oversight and reporting, and then when you get closer to that 2% and below, the state will step in and do your work for you.
Yeah, I just, that as a board member, I would not, in my term, like to see that go below the 3%, to have the Florida Department of Education to come in and start making decisions from Tallahassee on how we should spend the money on our students. So I watch this very carefully. I know we have large numbers over here, what's going out, but to me, this is the number that I'm keeping my eye on, because this is something I cannot allow as a board member to go below 3%, because it would put us in severe jeopardy. So I appreciate you answering that and clearing that up for me.
Yes, ma'am.
Any more?
I'd like to just second Mrs. Zork's thoughts on that. When I was elected, I did promise to make sure that we would maintain local control of the school district. I think government's best when it's closest to the people, and this certainly is an example of that. A functioning school board that's able to give direction about what the constituents need and want specifically in Indian River County is very important. So I second your thoughts and support you in ensuring that this district's fund balance remains at 3% or above.
I just wanted to remind some of the points that Ms. Zork makes. I disagree with, but they're just personal preferences. I wouldn't really get involved in the transportation, the reorganization, and things like that. I trust that to my administrator. But I do know that we buy off a state contract for busing. I also know we've participated in some efficiency fuel programs with our buses. But what I did want to say and remind the board was, when this board voted, there was many years where the premiums for health insurance weren't rightfully raised slowly. It caused a detriment to the households of our employees. And at the time when this board, the district said we could only do so much or it would affect our reserve, this district chose to, I believe it was 18%, pick up 18%. Am I wrong on that percentage, or was it 30? It was supposed to be 36.
I believe it was the average increase was about 31% as reported by
And we picked
Dr.
up
Fritz.
18%, is that correct? And
Roughly about that, as I recall.
And we all looked and
Verify
said, these are the hard decisions. So these constraints that are on our budget was caused by us in an effort to help our employees, which still does not help them as far as salaries and their wages. But at that time, we were advised by our financial advisor not to do that, but we voted on doing that. So I can only call to task ourselves for the problems with our budget. I think that there are some, but there's always money to be saved, and I do agree with some of the things that you've brought up, and we are going to review those. But I will say that, you know, we make difficult choices up here on services, and don't value one. It's like having children. You know, I personally feel when people say it's about the students, it's about the students. Of course it's about the students, but you need a bus to get them to school. You need food services. Different time, different place. I have always, and I remember Mr. Frost one time echoed, but I wish we could look into the federal school lunch funding, accounting, you know, accountability. At least in our district, I'm sure it's rampant abuse nationwide. Children need funds to eat, but I know that just checking a box and having a 10% of 17,000, or, you know, so many schools are almost at the poverty level, and I don't think there's enough time to check those to see that there are services. I have children, I have a child in the school, and you know, why is so-and-so wearing a Coors watch but receiving free and reduced lunch? I can't answer that, except for that the family checks a box, and maybe they get audited, maybe they don't. That has nothing to do with the budget, but I do have I just have to keep saying that, because I do have a problem with truthfulness and what we're teaching our children in that respect. Just because you can get it for free doesn't make it right. It's there for people who need it. But, and I really feel like that. I want every person in this community who needs that benefit to receive it. So when I say that, it's always dangerous, because people, you know, for people who need it, you know, it's nothing being said for that. It's that issue. But as I said, there's a lot to be said for our staff and the preparation of this budget. It's very meaty, lengthy, and it's a moving target. And unfortunately, legislative bills don't get out till late in the season, and then there's, you know, quick, let's reconfigure. And so I have to say a thank you to Dr. Rendell and to his staff for working with not the best circumstances. And as I said, there's always room for improvement, and I look forward to those discussions. But I will be supporting this tonight.
John? Yes.
Sure, thank you. And thank you, Mrs. Zork, for bringing those concerns forward. I look forward to hearing more of them in workshops as we go forward. And I can't speak for the entire board, but this board member is always excited to hear cost-saving measures that don't negatively impact the student learning experience or cause hardship on our employees. So if it's simple things like that, I look forward to seeing those. It sounds like you've done some extensive research. I'd also like to echo other board members' comments about the district going into what would be essentially receivership. That's not something I'm interested in. For those of you who follow education, or if you don't, just Google Jefferson County, Florida. It is record-setting. There's a situation there where the entire district has been taken over. The district is, they literally have a school board and a superintendent that I don't know what they do, because there is a charter organization, there is a charter board that is running that district. So because the school district failed to make tough decisions in tough times and to turn that ship around, and it was really unfortunate for, as an elected, it would hurt my ego, but what it would really hurt my heart would be the impact to the students. And that's the point here. We see in this budget, is it a perfect budget? No, it's not a perfect budget. I don't know that there ever is such a thing as a perfect budget. I think it's the budget that everyone can live with at this point. And it's a budget that will be shaped over the coming months as we resolve matters with different stakeholder groups and things like that. One thing that really, one number on the front page of the budget here that strikes me is this health insurance. It's a difference of roughly $8 million. That's about 24% increase. If you saw me play on my phone, that's what I was doing as a quick calculation there. And a lot of that is past decisions made by the board that this board, as Board Member Simchek pointed out, we decided we aren't going to pass that along to the employees. This board is going to take the hit on our reserve, but we have taken a hit. And for those, I know that there in some groups there's a sentiment that we have like Walter White, a storage locker out there somewhere with a pallet full of cash that is sometimes referred to as a rainy day fund. Well, just like Tropical Storm Emily, it's raining like crazy these last couple of years. So that fund has been depleted significantly, and I think that this board really must be mindful in our decision-making process about these next few months and difficult conversations and things we're going to have to attend to. But I appreciate all the work that Mr. Morrison and his team have done in bringing forward this very good budget, and I look forward to supporting it.
Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Sean made the motion, Dale made the second. I need a roll call vote. Ms. Epler?
Ms. Justice?
Yes.
Ms. Simchek?
Yes.
Mr. Frost?
Yes.
Mrs. Zork?
Yes.
Chairman Searcy?
Yes.
The motion carried unanimously in favor of the motion.
Very good. Okay, Dr. Rendell, you want to do the closing comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff will notify the property appraiser of the tentative millage rates and the tentative adopted budget. Until the final hearing on September 7th, the district will operate within this budget. I also want to echo the comments from several board members. This is a lengthy process. It has taken several months of work, not by just the staff here at the district office, but by the board members in workshops, giving us direction on things they value and wanted us to make sure that we remained intact, but also school-based personnel and everybody in all the departments. We did a zero-based budget process this year, so every department had to take a look at its budget and make sure that we weren't, spending money on things we didn't actually need. But it is a living document. The budget is a living document. We continue to work on it all the time, trying to make sure that we can be as efficient as possible. We are stewards of the taxpayer money, and we want to make sure we're good stewards of that. Mr. Morrison, anything to add?
Thank you very much, Dr. Rendell, for the opportunity. I just, again, want to thank my team for the late nights, the weekends, the stressful days and nights that we've worked through this information, and I appreciate all their hard work, and thank you for the opportunity for recognizing them and the board members.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all I have.
All right, if there's nothing else to come before this board, I declare this meeting adjourned. The time is 6 o'clock.